Welcome everyone to Through the Void Gate, a Warcaster podcast for new and experienced players. Deploying in 3.
Hello and welcome to Through the Void Gate, episode number 15. Here with me is Sneaky Buffalo.
Hello.
And I'm Dino from the Discord. What do we have going on in the news in the world of Warcaster here, Sneaky?
Yeah, so we haven't had a whole lot update since the last time we spoke, but we did get a Fulcrum Friday with the new Empyrean Aeon Thurge Commander Solo.
That's a mouthful.
Just looks, yeah, it's a lot. But it looks absolutely amazing. It's basically like an Astrius with a shield, so I'm super excited.
I love swords and shields. That's one of the things that got me into ISA. So
yeah, does it have a sword or a spear? I don't remember. Either way, it looks
a shield and something pointy. I'm sold.
Yeah. Either way, it looks really cool. The shield it basically looks like it ripped a chunk out of a Zenith. And that's what it's using as a shield, which I think's really cool. And also the shield is a gun. So who doesn't like gun shields? Let's go Khador.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so I'm super excited for that. And but other than that, we haven't had too much. Hopefully we've got some cool stuff coming this week, and yeah, I'll toss it over to you.
They said the international shipping, like Australia and Asia, starts shipping next week too, right?
I'll toss it over to you.
They said the international shipping, like Australia and Asia, starts shipping next week too, right?
Yeah, this week is what they said. Yeah, at the time of this recording, so it should already be shipped out by the time the listeners are hearing this. So
that's
hopefully
exciting. Everybody that got in on the Kickstarter, not me. We'll start to see stuff soon. I'll have to wait till like July or August in order to start ordering my vehicles and stuff. It makes me a little sad.
Yeah, you'll get there.
So in the community, we have not a ton, but we'll get there. Thunderhead Studios, he's been doing painting streams. If you want to catch those, just look him up on Twitch. He's been doing some really nice work with his AC. I'm kind of jelly of how well he paints. It's looking really cool. He's got a sweet scheme where like his reavers are different schemed than like the upper echelon of the cult. So it looks really nice. He does it really well. I can't say enough about it. Not to mention he's also making things for the community, different 3D prints and all that. So check out his Etsy store. I can never remember the guy who he prints through. Who's that guy?
Steel Warrior Studios.
Okay. Steel Warrior Studios. He if you can't print stuff yourself, he actually sells a lot of his prints through Steel Warrior Studios, so check that out. I think last podcast I called him Thunder Warrior Studios and I just mashed them. So it's Thunderhead for the guy that makes the things, and Steel Warrior where you can buy the things Thunderhead makes. And on to our main topic, another big time community content creator. We have John from the War Budgies YouTube channel here. Hey, John.
What's going on, guys?
Not a lot. So why don't you just give us a quick overview, like introduce yourself and your channel.
Sure. So I'm John. I'm kind of the director, executive producer, writer, filmmaker, the one-man show of War Budgies, which is a YouTube channel. Mostly these days we do battle reports for Fallout Wasteland Warfare. And more recently, we started into Warcaster towards the end of last year. We also tend to dabble around just with terrain videos, random projects. We did an Infinity Mirrors project a while back. I'm currently installing a bunch of motors into a Games Workshop Titan so I can make it move. Just really whatever I feel like doing that day.
Wow, that's cool. That is cool. So, and you have an episode coming out Sunday, right?
Yes, our next episode of Jericho Reach, which I believe should be episode 4, will be up on the 4th, so on Easter.
444. April 4th, the 4th episode. So, it's easy to remember that way.
It's all coming together.
So, what got you into miniature gaming and painting up miniatures and doing all the battle reports and everything?
Well, so it's kind of a long story. I'm glad you asked. I got into miniatures back in 2001, and that was with Warhammer 40k 3rd edition.
Okay.
There was just a friend of mine stopped by the house, and he had a box full of models and a magazine of White Dwarf, and he was like, "Hey, have you heard of this game before?" And I just, as soon as I looked at the stuff in the box, I immediately fell in love. Like, it was like a creativity adrenaline surge that I've been riding for 20 years now.
That sounds a lot like a lot of us, probably. I bet a lot of us can relate.
Yeah,
probably. I was like Warhammer Fantasy Battle 6th edition and 40k 4th edition, so I'm right there with you.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of your channel content is narrative based. So why'd you go the narrative route?
Well, so that actually ties into a little bit of how I got into it. So I'm not really like a math guy when it comes to games. Like I'm terrible at it. If you watch my videos, I'm sure you probably picked up on that. I have no sense of statistics whatsoever. What I do,
yeah.
yeah. Thankfully, neither do my dice.
Listen, Squad 2 just does double the work of anybody else. That's the only math you need to know.
I need to bring them to a tournament and just watch them wreck everything.
Or Squad 2 will go to a tournament and just be like the biggest laughing stocks. Like Squad 1s will show up at the tournament.
Yeah. And that's how my life is going.
All you gotta know is more dice, more better.
More dice is more better. Thank you.
Easiest math.
Yep.
Yeah. But honestly, like, as the hobby went along, I just found myself drawn more and more into the lore and the stories and the models and all that. You know, you got this whole hobby is kind of split between the gamers who hobby and the hobbyists who game. I'm definitely a hobbyist who occasionally games. So the whole narrative style of it really jumped out at me because I saw these, like, as a kid, I saw these tables full of miniatures and they're all having battles and all that. And I didn't see a game. I really just saw a story happening.
Okay.
So that's the thing I've really gravitated towards, and it's worked out really well with the style that I do. Because if I tried to do a competitive battle report, it would be just awful. I guarantee you.
Please make one of them, please. I want to see your hardest tournament tooled list going against each other.
I think you guys have literally right now seen all the models that I currently own. Because I'm trying to play catch up here.
Well, you've been kind of, as you paint things, adding them to your lists, right?
Yes.
Because I know the most recent addition that I know of was the Grafter.
Yep. Just finished the Grafter recently. I'll give you guys a spoiler for Sunday. We're going to bring in heavies.
Oh, my.
So
I am very curious to see how heavies affect a narrative.
So am I. I got a Strike Raptor and I got a Morning Star that I just finished up 2 days ago.
So kind of like a tangent off the narrative thing. How do you treat like which things you choose to activate in a narrative sense to like make the better story and everything? Because I know I would have the hard time. Like it's hard enough. Like when I have a Strike Raptor, right? Like how do you just not activate that every time? Like how do you hold that compulsion back in a narrative style battle report?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, or it's helped by the fact that I really don't know what I'm doing half the time.
Okay.
But no, it just,
so you just kind of do whatever you think will look coolest at the time, or?
Pretty much. I know I've made some terrible strategic choices in previous episodes because people have hit me up and been like, "Why did you do this?" It's like, because I thought it'd be cool, man.
Okay. I can dig that. You know, it's like I know sometimes when I feel like I know I do it when I'm out of games. You know, like when I've lost anyways. It's like I'm going for the rule of cool here. I'm doing whatever I think would be the coolest.
Yeah,
so.
And that's the only way that I really have a good time playing. I've tried to play the crunchy competitive side, and it's just not my flavor. But every time I play for the story, it doesn't matter if I win, lose, or if just absolutely get wrecked on the tabletop. I have a good time with it.
That's super cool.
If you have the opportunity to go full YOLO, you go full YOLO.
Yeah, always go full YOLO.
Always.
I'm very interested to see what you do with the next Kickstarter's worth of stuff where they introduce the campaign mode.
Oh, yes. I'm super excited about that. And I know nothing about it yet.
Me either, but I'm really hoping they have some kind of mode where, hey, week to week, you can gain little things for your different units. Like, maybe my Reavers killed a Warjack in melee, so now they go up to map 4. Whatever.
Yeah.
Something stupid like that. But it'd be so cool. I would love it. Like, you just get 8 people and you play games, and slowly all of your armies are just not the base armies anymore.
Absolutely. And I'm also really looking forward to, hopefully, a lore dump soon.
Well, I think that's also coming in Kickstarter 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping so, because I'm having to make a story here, and I'm really enjoying the freedom. But I always kind of wake up with a concern that maybe Jason Souls is going to show up with a crowbar one day. Hasn't happened yet, but it'd be nice to get some background.
You should show up with a box of money because you're like one of the only people making consistent Warcaster videos out there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I know everybody is like begging for more lore, and I know like when we interviewed Souls forever ago, he said he was working on the Marcher Worlds lore thing, and I don't think that's come out yet.
I don't think so. No.
Well, to be fair, his lore things are pretty long. You know,
Yeah,
like, so he's
sure.
Probably, you know, somebody's probably spending a long time making sure they edit it very carefully.
Yeah, and I think one of the things they mentioned for the campaign mode that I think you'll probably really like, John, is that they're talking about making it where you modify your Warcaster. So I think being able to give like your Warcaster's story and background and stuff.
Oh, that would be cool.
Would be cool. Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I want from the campaign mode, this is going to be dumb and probably like OP, but I want my Warjacks to break weapons off of other Warjacks and put them on themselves.
It's very kind of a Marcher Worlds type aesthetic there.
So
yeah.
It's a very mercenary type aesthetic.
Yeah, I guess, you know what, maybe ISA could do it.
Just,
And maybe Empyreans would never do it. Like, I'm not touching your filthy technology.
just go play War Machine.
But AC and Marcher Worlds, I could both see doing it.
That's fair.
Okay, so in case people haven't watched your battle reports, a lot of they're all solo so far. Now, is that because of COVID, or is this just always been a solo operation?
So that was actually kind of a happy coincidence, I guess. As happy a coincidence as you can get with COVID going on. But the first battle reports I started was back in, I guess, mid-2019. I started doing battle reports for Fallout, the Fallout skirmish game. And that game has a built-in solo mode to it.
Right.
So it's got like this AI system and all that. And trying to find somebody who I can schedule like 4 to 5 hours to film a 30-minute battle report, which is super frustrating.
Yeah.
An average episode of Warcaster takes me like 8 hours of work, and it's like a 45-minute episode. It's like, dang it. But
yeah, that is a little bit rough.
Yeah, but it became a lot easier to do it myself, and I was like, I'll just film this and see how it works. And it really hit it off with the viewers, and they really liked it. So when I finally got around and took the plunge into Warcaster, I just figured I'd port that kind of skill set over. And after you get over feeling ridiculous about it, it's actually not too bad.
Warcaster, I think, because the dice kind of tell the story most of the time anyways.
Yeah,
I think that it would do a lot, like it would make it feel less ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like playing by yourself in War Machine kind of feels a little awkward. Because first of all, you have 75-point armies, and like the dice are fairly consistent, so you kind of know what to expect each time.
Yes.
In Warcaster, I've had some crazy things happen. Like like fighter dusk wolves that just don't kill a weaver with all their attacks going into it. Like,
yeah,
some weird stuff happened.
Yeah, I've got squad 2, and I've got the Marauder who would not die for like 3
rounds. The Marauder that got better once he was on fire.
Yeah, I'm still not over that.
I'm not over it either. It was crazy. So I guess we kind of touched on this, but what kind of drew you to Warcaster, and made you see Warcasters, maybe a property you might want to start doing your battle report style with?
Well, I actually first saw it. So she hosts a retreat out in Utah every October called Valhalla in the Fall. And I'm going to take a moment to plug her thing because the Kickstarter is open right now for this year.
Go for it, man.
Yeah. But last year she brought her Kickstarter 1 boxes for Warcaster. And she didn't know how to play. Nobody at that building knew how to play. But we all kind of threw the models together, had a look at it. I didn't take part in the demo, but a few of my friends did, and they walked away super confused. And I kind of understand that since they're all War Machine players and I'm not, that a lot of the terms, the rat and mat and all that stuff, it's easy to get the terms confused around.
Okay.
But I had made the offhand comment at the time of like, hey, what you guys need is like a 5-minute video explaining to you the basics of this thing. And the rebuttal was, that's impossible. So
yeah, I feel like for Warcaster, it's entirely possible.
I took that kind of personal. So
yeah.
So I've recently finished up a 4-year tour as a military instructor, and I was like, I can teach anybody anything in 5 minutes, which is a terrible line of thinking.
But entirely accurate in the military.
Yeah, exactly. So on the flight home from Valhalla, I downloaded the rulebook, read it, and when I got here, I grabbed a couple of starter sets for ISA and AC because they look cool. And I made the How to Play Warcaster in 5 Minutes video, which I'm happy to say is now over 2,000 views.
Wow,
I'm really enjoying.
That's impressive, really.
It was fun to. It was hard, but it was fun to make. And it turns out you can condense the rules down to a 5-minute primer. And I think just a couple of days after I posted that, Privateer Press hit me up and was like, "Hey, do you want to do battle reports?" And I was like, "Well, now I do."
That's really cool. I didn't even know they had ever reached out to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, they've been really friendly this whole time. So I went out, got the Marshall World, sat down, and wrote out a sketch for the Jericho Reach storyline that night, and it was slowly chewing through it, but it's a lot of fun. Honestly, I had put aside a lot of the Privateer Press stuff for a while, just being more of a Games Workshop style gamer.
Okay.
The War Machine crowd, not to call anybody out, the War Machine crowd typically in my area was very competitive, and like I mentioned before, that's not my style.
Right.
So I've been very pleased to find
Riot Quest.
Yeah. Everyone keeps telling me to try Riot Quest. I need to try Riot Quest.
If you want a game that is not competitive at all, try Riot Quest.
I have some Monpoc sitting on my desk now, but it's not painted.
Yeah.
I think Monpoc is semi-competitive, right?
I mean, it's as competitive as you want to make it, just like any other game.
Yeah.
But I got a couple questions for you, John, before we move on. So what got you started YouTubing in the first place? Like, why did you want to jump into the miniatures YouTube scene?
Or life decisions. No, so around like 2015 or so, I was able to get back into the hobby kind of with a vengeance. Because for a long time, you've got like, I want to play, but I have no money. And then I've got money, but no time. And around 2015 or so, I was able to balance everything, got to know some people. And a couple of the folks I made friends with was Miranda over at Wargamer Girl, good friend of mine, Dave over at Mini Wargaming. And just hanging out with those guys, and I saw the YouTube stuff they were producing. I was like, this looks like fun. This honestly looks like a lot of fun. So the style that I use is actually kind of a mashup of both of their styles because they taught me how to do this. And after I tried it, I just got hooked. It's like it's become a whole spin-off hobby.
Oh, wow. It's like a hobby within a hobby.
Yeah.
Hey, says the guy who's on a podcast right now. And then, and then my other question was, why War Budgies?
I love that question. That was a somewhat whimsical thing back when I first started posting pictures on Facebook. So I made a Facebook page, and I needed a name for it. And one thing the military loves is they love to slap the word war in front of any kind of animal. So the Warhound, the War Dogs, Warhawks, Warbirds, all this kind of stuff. The unit I was with at the time, we were called the Warbirds. But my wife and I had two budgies, which if you've not seen a picture of a budgie, it's like a fat parakeet.
Yeah, it's the little short, chunky ones, right?
Yes. It's the most adorable, harmless thing in the world. And I was like, I'm going to call this thing War Budgies.
That's funny.
Because if you Google War Budgies, it's not like there's a whole bunch of options out there. So brain recognition high. Hilarity also high.
That's pretty cool. Do you have any more sneaky before we moved on?
No, that's it.
Okay, so let's launch in a little bit into talking about your specific Warcaster series on your channel, the Jericho Reach campaign. So could you give people that haven't watched maybe season 1, kind of like the glossing over of kind of where we're at in the story? Absolutely.
So towards the end of last year, we did the prologue series, which was called The Battle for Jericho Reach. And it was just an intro to the starter boxes. It was a framework to show off the starter boxes. But it's centered around this little world out in the middle of nowhere called Jericho Reach. It's not notable for anything. It's not strategic value. It's actually incredibly volatile. There's arc geysers and weird crap happening. But it's one of the Marshall Worlds. And they've been fighting with the AC for various reasons for control of it. And over the course of the Battle for Jericho Reach, this ISA warship called the Lawgiver shows up, by mistake actually, and they end up sort of wrapped up in this conflict and suppress the planet. So they bring Jericho Reach into the ISA, and when we open up season 1, we come to find out that the Marshall Worlds are not down for the count at all, and neither are the AC. And this world has continued to be a problem for weeks and weeks and weeks after it was supposed to be suppressed. Excuse me. So we pick up with a Paladin commander named Taria, as she kind of goes through trying to hunt down who the Marshall Worlds Warcaster is and try to figure out what the AC is up to. So we're sort of following her along two different lines of thought.
That's really cool. I know that we're going into episode 4 this upcoming Sunday. Well, how many more episodes are planned for this campaign?
I'm planning for 10 total.
Okay,
so there's going to be
like an HBO
3 arcs
season.
of 3. Yeah. Essentially, it's going to be a full-on season. But there's going to be 3 arcs of 3. So at the end of this first arc, we've uncovered the fact that the Marcher Worlds have another Warcaster. Because when the ISA showed up, they blew up the Marcher Worlds flagship, or skyship, or whatever they're called. And it's becoming apparent that the Marcher Worlds have another Warcaster on tap. And we've also placed Taria in charge of the operations. So she's having to step up and answer this impossible challenge now, figuring out where these guys are coming from, what the AC is doing, and that's going to take us into episode 4.
That's awesome. Anybody who's watched your battle reports has definitely seen that you put a lot of time and care into your map, and like all the terrain, the scenarios, the everything. Where are you drawing some of those inspirations from?
Oh, I appreciate that. It kind of goes back to looking at a battle and seeing a story. So when I'm setting up for a game, it needs to be a very visually appealing, kind of well-framed type thing. Maybe not the best for actually fighting a game, funnily enough. But
well, I know the first episode of this season, I remember seeing your scenario for that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one where the Marcher Worlds were fighting the ISA, right? And the Marcher Worlds, like, you had the ISA in the center, and the Marcher Worlds were just coming out from everywhere.
Yep.
I remember seeing your deployment for that one. I was like, this isn't even going to be a game.
And that's the kind of thing I want to get. Like, let's take a scenario and let's throw it on its head. Let's put it somewhere where cool things are going to happen. Episode 2 is one of my favorites because it's a split map. So
I thought that split map idea was really cool.
It was fun.
For anybody who hasn't seen it, he basically has like a mining complex in the center of like the main Warcaster board, and then he has a separate board because you can go inside the mining complex, like underneath in the I don't know what you'd call those, the catacombs of it or whatever.
Yeah.
And you'd be able to you would actually had a separate fight going on down there.
Yep.
Really cool. That was like, I mean, if that was realistic for most people in most places, I'd be like, yes, we need to do this all the time.
I mean, with skirmish boards, that's not too unrealistic. You can easily fit 2 skirmish boards on a kitchen table.
Right, but isn't like Privateer Press can actually make a scenario that says, "Hey, have 2 of our boards now."
Oh yeah. That's
fair.
Isn't
like you can ever go to a tournament and be like, "Okay, we're gonna play the 2 board one."
Everybody starts groaning.
Yeah, I know. They're like, "Wait, we gotta," Whereas I think it's really cool, and it is really cool. It's just not. It's sad to me that it's not realistic as like a more like common thing. If that makes sense.
It's one of those things that fits the narrative very well, but not outside of that context.
But I mean, you've also been playing around a whole lot with terrain rules. I really like your Art Geyser that you came up with for this last one. For anybody that's not aware, he had 4 Art Geysers on the map, right?
Yep.
Which those things are roughly the size of like a CD or a DVD, right?
Just about, yeah.
And every turn, was it every turn or at the end of every, like, at the end of each player turn, or was it at the end of the turn?
At the end of the turn, so after the second player's turn.
Okay. After the second player's turn, he would roll for each one, and on a 6, they would like explode, and they could charge your things, or if you couldn't take any more arc, you'd actually take a damage roll. So it was a really cool way to like just add some flavor to the terrain, and just get a lot more out of it than a lot of the stagnant terrain that's currently getting used, because we don't really have Privateer Press supported rules for anything more elaborate.
Right. And those kind of terrain rules are something I really want to expand on moving forward, because taking a normal scenario and just throwing a little bit of a twist in it is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like it's very inspiring. I hope that Collision Courses like maybe fleshes out some new kinds of terrain types, right? And maybe an Art Geyser is one of them. And maybe they have a rule similar to that where, hey, this Art Geyser could erupt and do these things. Maybe not like carbon copy what you did, but something similar. I think it adds a lot of flavor to boards, adds a lot of tactics that both narrative and competitive players can enjoy. Sort of like how War Machine has, there's acid pools there, and nobody really wants to interact with the acid pool, but it does give a lot of tactical flexibility. So
right,
I'm hoping they toy with that a little bit.
Just as
funny
as
as
not more arc boosters.
Oh, the arc boosters are kind of they should stay in narrative. They would be fine in narrative. Have you played with any arc boosters yet?
I have not.
Are you familiar with them?
Nope.
Okay, the arc boosters basically, if you're holding the arc booster, it changed. Like if you're holding it at the beginning of your turn, it changes how much arc you can allocate at the beginning of your turn.
Oh.
You get an extra 1 for each arc booster you're holding. So for some factions, it's probably okay. Like whereas I think it'd be good in AC. I don't think it like breaks AC.
Mm-hmm.
But these factions like Empyreans and Marcher Worlds, where like whether I can charge up my Strike Raptor to full or not, kind of changes the entire game. Or I'll just take all the damage on my shield, on my arc for my Sentinel because I can just charge it back up to full. it's kind of game breaking.
That's spicy. I like that.
Hey, I think it's cool, but I think it's probably better in narrative.
Yeah.
Where you're not playing the things to be oppressive, right? You're playing the things to have a good time and make a story. So, you're not going to only activate your Strike Raptor 3 turns out of 3 turns of the pulse round.
Yeah. We played it in one of our pendulum events, and it was either completely irrelevant or it completely changed the game.
Oh, wow.
And oddly enough, a lot of that depended on where it was placed, right, Sneaky?
Yeah, and a little bit on like some other things, but largely the one where it wasn't in a hotly contested area, it became much more relevant. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I'm super excited to see a lot more of your maps and stuff. Most of your terrain, did you make it or buy it?
It's kind of a mix. I'm super cheap when it comes to terrain. So there's a lot of MDF. There's a lot of pretty much the entire jungle board was stuff from PetSmart on the clearance aisle.
Makes sense.
There's a lot of it I'm scratch building. I'm actually very excited. I'm going to let you guys know, coming up in the second half of the season, we've got a battle that's going to take place on a train.
Oh my god, this is going to be so cool.
So I'm scratch building a train, and there's rules for how it moves and whether or not you get jostled off and all that throughout the battle.
See, this is the kinds of things we need. I love stuff like that. I also love competitive games, but I also love like just cool, fun rules that make that can kind of change a game.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. I know I was really impressed. You had this one mining complex that pretty much took up the entire skirmish board. I keep calling it season 1, the prequel season.
Right, in the prologue. That was actually, I'm trying to remember where I got that from. That was from a Kickstarter a long time ago.
It took up like the entire board except for the deployment zones. I was so impressed by how large this piece of terrain was.
What's actually wild about that, it actually has pillars to sit on, like a foot tall, and they've got catwalks and all that. But when I put the pillars on, I couldn't film the dang thing because it was too tall.
That is insane. So after talking about the maps and everything, I know we've kind of touched on this, but what are some of your favorite units in Warcaster? Now that you've played some games, you've seen the rules, you've got to experience it a little bit. What kind of units are kind of coming out at you as some of your favorites?
Well, I'm going to have to give it to Squad 2 right off the bat.
Which Squad 2?
Specifically the ISA Squad 2 that now has a campaign ribbon painted on it.
Well, they did some heavy lifting, and I think it was that Marcher World versus ISA one.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I was so shocked throughout that entire. I was like, how is this happening?
What blew my mind about that was I had done a couple of play tests beforehand. It's like I like to run through the scenarios so I kind of see how they'll go. And in none of the play tests did the ISA do that well. And then I turned the camera on.
About Warcaster, you just never know what the dice are going to do.
And honestly, I love that about this game. Yeah, as soon as you turn the camera on, everything gets weird.
ISA's like, okay, guys, we're done losing to these guys.
Yeah, that honestly has been one of my favorite things about Warcaster in general, is just how amazingly cinematic it can get with those moments.
And I think that's a big selling point of Warcaster, honestly, is just that the dice tell their own story a lot of games. You know, I can have all the dice math going in my favor all I want. Sometimes that thing just is not going to die.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating at the time, but it's one of those things you remember. Like, there's a lot of moments from a lot of games that I remember just because they probably shouldn't have happened, or they were just such a long odds thing of happening.
I love your YOLO Weavers.
My Weavers have always been the star of the show.
Really?
For some reason, those guys roll bananas for defense. They always end up like rolling bananas for offense. Like, especially my AC Weavers. Do not count those guys out, man. Those guys, spray 8 may seem like nothing, but they can line them up. When they have 9 inches of movement, they can line up a spray, and suddenly a whole squad got vaporized.
Sometimes they go for YOLO Suicide Furies off of a building.
Yeah, that was
like
the last Pendulum League. What happened was I had a Weaver there was actually a combination of 2 Weavers and a Scourge. So I needed to kill an Engineer off of a point.
Right.
and I needed to slam a Dusk Wolf off of it to win. So one Weaver could see the Engineer from the side and shot him with a Fury, did 1 point of damage and corroded him. The Scourge went up and was a disappointment as always, didn't kill him. The other Weaver activated, but because I needed to I needed to go up a ladder and jump off of a building, I couldn't use my normal movement for it. So because I needed to get enough distance, like my spike to move would be enough.
Oh, yeah.
So he went up to the top of the building. He did his spray with no arc, killed the Engineer, jumped off the building in a spot that would line him up perfect for a velocity projector on the Dusk Wolf, and velocity projected the Dusk Wolf off of a point.
Beautiful.
It was like this weird combo play that I had to do to scrape out a win.
And it's really cool that in this game that's even possible.
Right. There's a lot of really cool stuff I've seen. I know that you're playing narrative, so you probably don't play with the secondaries, but one of them is Recon.
Mhm.
And one of the upcoming characters that is coming out, Harlan Sek. I don't know how finger on the pulse you are with Kickstarter 2 stuff.
Not very. I've got a bunch of ISA coming. That's about it.
He has a spike for a teleport. So what I had somebody do is Recon says once you hit your opponent's deployment zone, basically, you get 3 points. It's not the end of your activation or anything. You don't have to do anything special. As soon as you touch that deployment zone, you get 3 points.
Wow.
So then what he did was he moved to my deployment zone, and then he spiked to teleport to the other side of the map to try and contest a point. It's just, there's a whole lot of really cool, big brain plays you can make.
That's wild.
He's pretty good. So throughout your games, what are some things that have surprised you?
Well, I've been surprised to learn that the ISA are actually the good guys in this setting. I'm joking. I'm joking entirely.
I was about to say, I was like, I think you got it twisted.
Yeah. No, honestly.
Inherently, I don't think ISA are bad either. I think they're actually kind of the neutral.
No, I think it's fantastic. But the biggest thing that surprised me is how fast you can come back from having nothing on the board.
I have tabled Sneaky before, and he's beat the snot out of me in a game. So yes, that is very possible.
This is, I think this is the only skirmish game I've ever played where that's even a thing. Like in every situation where I feel like one side is going to win single-handedly, the other side almost always just comes roaring back.
I mean, honestly, this is the only miniatures game period I've played where that is a thing that can happen.
Yeah, it took some while. It took a while to get the hang of it, right? Because you're just like, all my dudes are dead. But then you realize that everything's going to come back in a second, and it's okay.
Yeah, I know that I know in other games, if you lose half your force, you almost feel like you're out of the game.
Yeah.
And in this one, most of the time, it's all right if you lose 2 or 3 things in a turn. It really changes the way you have to think.
Exactly.
That and the dice. The dice also change the way you have to think of the thing.
The dice do what they want.
You really kind of have to expect to lose 2 or 3 things a turn in this game. Like, turns where nothing dies, I'm just like, what happened? Why are all my models? I'm like, why are all my models still in the? I have a void gate. I want to summon stuff.
I'm actually bummed out that my guys are still alive.
This game has also had me not kill things just to mess with my opponent.
Yeah.
Because sometimes their activation tokens are awful. Like maybe they only summoned in one thing, but if you killed their other thing, then all their other stuff loses the activation. If you killed that thing, all their other stuff loses the activation tokens. So there's a whole thing with that too. So is there some I know you were talking about the scenario with the train. Is there anything else you want to spoil about things we should look forward to?
For season 1, not sure. Hopefully, and I'm not sure when the shipping is going to get here. Hopefully, the Kickstarter 2 is going to fulfill around episode 6 or so. And the plan is just to try to paint like a madman and get that stuff up as soon as possible.
So you have more coming than just ISA?
I've got ISA. I've got a couple of vehicles. I'm not going to say who yet.
Oh.
I've got a couple of vehicles, so I really want to do race mode, and I really want to have vehicles kind of showed off here.
That would be pretty cool to have an episode be a race mode kind of thing.
Oh, 100%. As soon as I saw the live stream where Faye and Hungerford were showing off race mode, I was like, this needs to be an episode. This is going to be an episode.
That would be really cool. And okay, this is kind of a tangent, but I just watched Mandalorian season 2. There's this whole episode where they're on this vehicle and they're getting attacked while they're trying to get to this base. And I'm kind of imagining this episode, something like that.
Yeah. See, now you're starting to think narrative.
Oh, you corrupted me.
Yeah. But the kind of the way the season's going is I want to introduce a new kind of unit or just a new unit with each episode. So someone who's new could start with the three episode prologue, follow the season, and kind of slowly be introduced to everything.
It's a pretty good way to do it and just slowly get people accustomed to things coming into the game and everything.
Exactly.
Because
So
some
for this
people
next
have a
episode-
hard time with like waves of new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I looked at it, it looks like a lot of information. So I'm trying to break it down as best I can for people.
I think you do a pretty good job, and even when you get a rule wrong, I noticed that you've gotten pretty good about like realizing it later on and putting some kind of little note on there,
Yeah,
being like, "Hey, I know I should have rolled 2 more of this dice, or I know I rolled too many of this dice. You know, it happened. We fix it later, or whatever." I've seen you put a couple of those little tags in.
Yeah.
Stop my comment a couple times.
well, part of the idea is to make this accessible for people who are new to the game, and I don't want to mess somebody up by showing a rule that I got wrong and did not say anything.
Right. Oh, I love it when people do that. You know, like I think it's always good when it's full disclosure. And, you know, I know a lot of the times I'll comment and I'll try and make it, you know, just so, hey, you know, in the future, just so you know, this rule works like this and not like this. Because I always try and assume that people just didn't understand or just completely forgot about it.
Right.
You know, not like anybody's doing anything. You're maliciously getting the rules wrong and hurting the whole.
It's all part of the plan.
Yeah. Bringing us all down to your level. I get it. So, with the Empyreans coming out, do you have any plans for Empyreans in this season? Or is that maybe a next season kind of thing?
So I have plans for them story-wise, yes. That being said, you probably won't see the models there because I'm frantically building up the starter set models, or the 3 starter armies, obviously the humans, and it would be a lot of money sink to try to drop on Empyreans right now.
Isn't that right, Sneaky?
Isn't that?
Gotta,
Not to call
gotta go
anybody out.
ultimate, bro. Gotta go ultimate.
He backed the ultimate for Empyreans.
I applaud you, sir.
Well, he doesn't have to buy all 4 factions like you would if you went to Empyrean. So
Yeah.
that said, I guess you also, being that you're playing narrative, you also don't have to buy like the competitive lists for each thing. So you don't need 3 copies of this and 4 copies of that. And don't even use this guy. He's not good anyways.
Right.
So I
No,
guess that does free you up a little bit on that kind of stuff.
A little bit. I'm trying to get at least like 1 of everything and 2 of a few things like the paladins or whatever that I can beef out and have some variety.
Yeah.
But I will say that the way
Need
the
more
season is going
weavers.
to end, without giving away any major spoilers, the way the season is going to end is going to immediately set up season 2. And season 2 is going to be heavy Empyreans.
I'm excited. So one thing that has been missing from your battle reports that I've noticed is heroes. Are there any plans to bring heroes in before the end of this season, or is that going to be like a next season?
There are plans to bring in heroes. Next week is going to be the heavies. I'm going to introduce people to the heavies. And then either the week after or the one after that, so episodes 5 or 6, we're going to see heroes.
I'm pretty excited for that. Just
I needed-
just a sidebar. What are
Yeah.
some of your favorite heroes in the game right now?
Well, I haven't tried them out yet, is the thing.
Oh,
I'm painting... I'm going to butcher his name so bad. I'm painting Hierotheus Raxus.
we just go with Raxus around here.
Perfect. So I'm painting Raxus literally while we're having this conversation. It just I have nothing ready for the tabletop yet.
Okay. Well, Raxus, I'm interested to see how he plays in a narrative sense because the community seems to be kind of like split on him.
Really?
I personally play him very aggro. I'll summon him in the middle of the board, but where he's not going to touch an objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I let people either let their hatred kill him and give me better objective power, or or he lives and he gets to affect the board for more turns. So I kind of
I
make
like your
people make a
style.
decision.
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen a lot of people that they'll summon him at the back of their board edge and be like, well, he's going to give me 6 cards all game. So yeah.
Yeah. Distraction hero is 100% a thing in this game.
Well,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the thing is with Raxus, like the thing is, even if he gets to activate and do his thing, he's actually pretty lethal too. He does
Yeah.
some pretty bananas things.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, just think the Weaver spray from AC, but with 2 extra inches and an extra rat.
Ooh.
And I already get money printed by those Weavers. Like I love hitting him with the aggression theorem. Like that is like my favorite blow up thing.
I don't know. I'm all about Stabby McGee.
Is that
Is that
Voss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Just a guess.
Yeah. Judge,
I mean,
jury,
you could-
and
you could say
executioner.
Wargrave is also Stabby McGee.
He's got a
Yeah.
gun.
He does, but the blade is the star of the show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's I
what
think
it is.
the blade even has a name. I think I don't have my
Yeah.
thing open right now.
But listen,
I would look it up.
he's not a sword mage. He just has a magic sword. There's a difference.
He's multi-class.
I don't remember his story exactly, but isn't there something living inside that sword?
I don't know.
You're gonna make
I'm
me
looking at the
nervous.
model right now, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised.
It's a wannabe Witchfire. Or
Like,
is
he is
what his
He
sword
is what ISA would be if they were genuinely evil.
Well, yeah, that's his story. Is he's from the ISA, and then
Yeah, his blade is
evil.
called Oblivion. Like, I don't know how you don't make him be Mr. Stabby when he gets just as many melee attacks as Boss.
I mean, yeah, I guess if he spikes, but he just has a fancy sword. It doesn't mean he's good with it. All right.
He's got the same mat and same POW as Boss.
Yeah, but does he pierce your armor?
No, he just has high intensity instead. Which pierces your armor.
Can he do it? Can he do it twice?
I sense there's a rivalry
no, but
there
he
somewhere.
he can recharge himself though. So
All right.
watch out.
Moving on.
Don't sleep on Morgrave. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And heal himself.
Yeah, I'm expecting John to show us the power of Morgrave in the battle report.
But he's not that.
John's gonna make Morgrave just the most OP guy on the tabletop.
Question is-
I'm telling you right now, just because you talk garbage on him.
And that's how it works.
The question is, question is who's he fighting for? Or some narrative play, does he switch factions mid-season?
Or mid-game.
Well, that is actually a cool
This is
twist for your
wild
narrative
card.
things. Is that most of these characters, the non-faction specific ones,
Mid-game,
actually could
that would
swap
be-
factions, and it could be part of your narrative story, which is actually something I hadn't considered until Sneaky brought that up.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to bringing in the heroes soon. I think it's going to add a lot of flavor.
And Sneaky, you might want to check your mic. It's doing something. So outside of Jericho Reach, after you've played a good number of Warcaster games now, just to kind of pick your brain about some of the things and the rules that you really like. Terrain. How do you feel about terrain in Warcaster? Like just the book terrain. I know that maybe you don't feel like it's enough because you've made your own rules and you've done a bunch of your own stuff. But how do you feel about the terrain in Warcaster and how it affects the game?
Well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask for that because all my terrain placement and selection is based on what looks good and what looks cinematic. But I don't know. I think it's important to have a lot of line of sight stuff going on. Or the very first battle report I filmed back in the prologue, I posted a picture in the Facebook group and I was like, hey, get me filming. And I had a picture of the table and everybody commented and they were like, dude, you need more terrain. Whoever's playing Marcher is going to slam on this one. You need terrain.
You could, honestly, I found out that if you post pictures in the Discord of any table, they'll say, you need more terrain.
Well, as it
There's
turned out, they
actually
were right.
no terrain placement you can make that everybody's going to be like, that is the best, that is a good table. I love that table is awesome. You will
just
get
wait till
like
the
two
train
people
episode
that
comes
say
out.
that, but there will always be more people that say, oh, there's too much of this or there's not enough of that. But I do 100% agree with you. Line of sight block terrain makes and breaks the game.
Yes. Which is why I'm really curious to see all these units coming out with fly now. Like that, I think I'm really excited about. I understand results may vary.
My problem is I've been forcing myself to try and love the Nemesis, and the Nemesis becomes a lot harder to love when there's a bunch of flying melee models around.
Yes. I don't have a Nemesis yet, so I can't comment on that yet.
Well, I'm sure you'll get it, and just like everybody else, you'll have to either look at pictures or ask around on the Discord on how the hell does this back piece work?
I did notice that.
Because it's it works. It just doesn't work the way it looks like it should.
It's not very intuitive.
It's not. It is one of these things. I had to sit there and look at the Nemesis and match up like, oh, that's how this looks, and this must be this part, and just okay. There's like a tab or something I think I had to clip, and everything worked.
There you go.
But yeah, so I like your table. Have you played around with ladders at all? I don't know if I've noticed any ladders on your tables yet.
Well, the first few play tests I did with ladders, and I found out really quickly that they're very limiting in the way they let models scale up and down. So for the most part, a house rule is everything has ladders. So if there's a wall, you can scurry up the wall.
Okay. Now, do you still use the ladder rules? I just know that I always, I never see you measure anything because you always pre-measure and then you get to filming and you're like, okay, well, he moves from here, scurries up this wall and goes over to here.
Yeah.
Do you use the ladder rules in those situations, or do you just kind of like say, well, this takes off 2 inches of his?
I just kind of take off 2 inches for the most part.
Okay. Because I was a little bit curious about that because I do see you moving models up pieces that I'm like, he can't move up there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand your battle reports are narrative. Like, I'm never going to go in the comments and be like, you need some ladders if you want things on these terrain pieces. Like, I understand you're telling a story, and that's that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I'm not sure your way is any worse than ladders. I actually might like your way probably more because ladders, I think a lot of the community have found are mildly problematic
I could see that.
because, well, they end up turning into speed boosters to climb up vertical sometimes. Like, I know I've had my flying models that could hit a ladder will always use it because as you know, in Warcaster, everything except for deployment is just within, not wholly within.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start off an inch away from a ladder and you take away 2 inches to use the ladder and you get within an inch of the other side, that means you always just get your base size and extra movement.
Yeah, pretty much.
And for heavies, I mean, that's 2 inches every time. So if you have a flying model that can hit 2 ladders and you Ascension Catalyst, you're moving like 12 inches.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy. So I think that your way is probably arguably better because you don't get the extra movement, which is kind of nonsensical.
Well, at the very least, it's simpler. And when I'm out there trying to juggle all this kind of stuff and keep my rules right and all that, I need the rules to be as simple as possible so I don't mess anything up.
Right. Hey, and you know what? You can't mess up rules when you're the one. You're like, hey, John, do you agree that I can just move up here? Yes, John, I agree. We can move up there.
Very nice of you to ask that way. Thank you.
That is one of the nice things I imagine about doing the solo battle reports is like there's none of this, hey, I'm going to do this. Do we agree that this is possible? Like you're not having to do these checks against yourself to like, hey, Can you confirm that I'm not measuring and doing anything malicious?
I'm always doing something malicious.
I think we've all had that weird, awkward moment where somebody's like, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And they're like, no, you're not. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I think we've all had that situation. And so, the solo battle reports is like, maybe I shouldn't be able to do this, but I'm going to do it because it's going to look cool.
And that is literally the thought process.
So on about Warcaster, what are some of your favorite aspects of the gameplay? Just like in general.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that units can come back, the fact that units die so fast and come back, I think is simultaneously the coolest thing about the game, and also the hardest thing to introduce people to, because it is a huge feels bad when all your guys die. You know
what though? I would argue that most of the gaming community has played some form of Warhammer. If that some form of Warhammer happens to be 40k, and you've gone second against like an Imperial Guard army, you know this feeling, but your things don't come back.
Exactly. And as soon as you explain to them, like, hey, you can redeploy all those units next turn, and they're like, really? It's like, yeah, that's where the few demo games I've run, that's where you really start to get people. It's like, okay, I don't have to worry so much about this. And then it becomes less of a beatdown and more of a fight.
Right. I think that does. And I think especially once narrative becomes its own system, like once they include the campaign mode and they further back narrative, I think more people will be able to embrace that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it is very cinematic, having these, reinforcements coming in all the time, but from like a more manageable thing, So, like I do watch Warhammer games and stuff, and it's like anywhere on the board, as long as you're X inches away from somebody, it's like, how do I even stop this? Like,
yeah. And like the other thing that I think so cool about Warcaster is like how dynamic it is and how the zones of battle change based off like where you're deploying your stuff and what you have to activate and things like that. It's not like most other games where it's you run into the middle of the battle and then everyone scrims it out at the middle of the table. Right? I could have models on one far side of the table one turn, and then the very next turn they could be all the way. I could be activating models on the complete other side of the board, right? And it just changes the dynamic of the game, which I didn't appreciate because Warcaster was my first game until I started playing some Brawl Machine, and I was like, yeah, we all just run into the middle and then we try to kill each other.
Well, yeah, one thing about Warcaster that I think is really cool is that a lot of the times, at the end of the first pulse round, I think that's probably about the point where it starts to happen. I'm not sure you can usually, just by looking at the board, tell who had which deployment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It gets very murky from there. And I think that's one of the coolest things, because I think 90% of other war games, you can usually tell, like, halfway through a game. And, first pulse round isn't even halfway through the game. Like, you can look at most other games and you'll be like, oh, well, he started off over here and he started off over here, and maybe he's got one unit on this side that's not his, but, he's got like that solo snaking around. But in, like, Warcaster, I've got 2 units here, I've got 2 units on that thing, and I've got 1 unit over there that's got 1 guy left, and you probably have very similar things on your side. And it's like, well, who started where?
Yeah. I think it was the first episode of the Battle for Jericho Reach prologue. By halfway through the game, the two armies had completely switched sides of the table, and each controlled each other's deployment zone now.
Yeah, it's a huge thing that happens. It happens pretty often, honestly. And some of the scenarios actually kind of encourage it. The ones where they score for owning your opponent's side. In those, what usually happens is it looks like the opponent, that's their board edge because they've got so many things over there. They're like, I want to score these 3 points. So, yeah, it's very interesting how Warcaster kind of just throws that normal, like the thing we take for granted, the board sides, and just kind of like tosses.
Yeah. It does not feel like any other war game I've played, and I really like that.
I mean, that's probably one of the best things about it. So it doesn't feel like other war games. Yeah. It's its own monster, which is scary and great at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you mentioned you have the Fallout campaign that you're doing. So how long have you been doing that project, and about how many episodes roughly do you have of that?
Oh, good Lord. Season 1 for that was back in 2019. That was 5 episodes. And Season 2 was last year. That was 10 episodes. And now we're like 5 episodes into Season 3. So Fallout has definitely been the mainstay of War Budgies so far, and it's just been a lot of fun because it's a world that I know well, whereas with Warcaster, I'm still kind of learning the lore and feeling things out and trying not to piss off Jason Souls, you know?
You know what? Right now, we have so little lore, piss him off.
Make that dude drive to Virginia.
Hey, it's narrative. You're doing it for fun and to entertain people. Honestly, the lore is whatever you want it to be. I mean,
which is super exciting.
I've taken off all the heads on my AC and turned them into rats. So, I mean, it's whatever you want, right? Like, yeah, I would not be too worried about upsetting anybody with the lore. Like, there isn't enough lore right now for there to be anybody being like, doing like the 40K thing where they're all like, heretic.
I think
so
it's
outside
supposed
of
to be in the collision course, I think there's supposed to be some kind of little lore blurb about like a Fiddles versus Duchess situation, which I can't wait to read.
Yeah, I remember them mentioning that.
I hope they have a race. That said, I think Duchess automatically.
Duchess would smoke Fiddles.
So yeah, that
as
doesn't
long as
make
Duchess,
any sense.
as long as Duchess lives, that's the thing.
That's true. I don't think Duchess lives.
I don't either.
I don't know if you've looked through those rules, but
No, I'm saving that for a surprise for when I get stuff.
Fiddle and Co. is a little bit absurd.
I have heard this in rumors, whispered.
Rat 5 base with Rat 6 on the turret and all the guns and being able to shoot them twice, and it's so much. And he's armor 5.
Part of cannon that ignores cover. Yeah, you're silly.
Yeah. I don't see Duchess living. You're right, Sneaky. That's how that ends. He just blows up Duchess. Any other projects outside of the Fallout Warcaster project?
Well, the big one right now is after many, many years of my friends kind of poking me at it, I've picked up War Machine this past few months.
What faction?
I'm diving into Protectorate of Menoth, so I'm basically still playing ISA.
I almost expected you to say Sigma. I don't know why.
Oh, I thought about it, but there's a local here who already plays Signar, so I was like, nobody's playing Protectorate right now. I'll pick that up.
Okay.
Protectorate's pretty cool.
And I can set things on fire.
I like Protectorate. It's just they have such a weird dichotomy in that faction. Like a lot of their stats after you play other factions, they're like one lower in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like I'm so used to like small base single wound infantry, like always being speed 6, and then you go into the Exemplars and the Knights Errant are like speed 5, and I'm like, why are these speed 5? Like these guys have Pathfinder. They don't.
Supposed to know what you're doing. But no, there's some really cool locals around here I'm getting to know because I'm still kind of new to the area.
Okay.
And we're starting up the campaign book. I think it's Oblivion, the Infernals Invasion. So I'm excited.
So are you going to be recording your Oblivion games, or?
Probably not at this point, just because I know there's War Machine YouTubers out there already, and I kind of have my hands full with Warcaster and Fallout.
Okay, hey, it's fine. I'm not. I think Warcaster and Fallout, being able to do 2 campaigns and keep everything straight. Honestly, actually, the biggest accomplishment I think in your videos is having 2 different cipher decks and not getting confused in the discard and draw piles each time. Because I do that with just one. Like I'm like every game, like the deck will get down, and I'll for some reason put my cipher hand right next to it, and it always happens. I pick up the wrong one at some point. I don't know what my problem is. I just have to keep things far away from each other.
Well, the thing you're not seeing off camera is there's a huge table I right next to me with everything laid out really far away from each other for that reason.
I've been mildly low-key impressed by that the entire time. Like, oh my god, He doesn't mess this up at all.
Just the next big project is moving through War Machine. Just whenever I can find the time in between filming, because filming keeps me pretty busy right now.
Well, yeah, I know you were saying 8 hours for a single episode. I mean, it's a full day's work. Like,
Well, it's usually there's a filming day, and then I'll sit down and actually edit everything, do all the voiceovers and the effects and all that the next day.
so is that 2 8-hour days, or is that
No, it's like a
4 and 4 kind of thing?
yeah. It probably masks out to about 4 and 4, maybe a 5 and 3. The filming takes a long time because I go super slow because I have to double check myself on everything.
Okay, and make sure that you caught, like, you didn't screw up your camera angle and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, makes sense. So I know you already said that Raxus is on your painting table, or actually in your hands being painted right now.
Yep.
Anything else on the painting table right now?
Let me look around. My desk is just an absolute horror show. So
I think anybody who has paints and paintbrushes has that going on.
yeah. Well, aside from him, the other big thing is I picked up a Monster Apocalypse figure whose name I cannot pronounce. He's a beetle.
That model's beautiful too.
Yeah, that one's really cool. The Hercules beetle.
Yeah, Zizarak.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
And
you
they're
know what? Monpok is a game that, like, the game does not interest me at all, and I hate that because people tell me it's a great game. I tried to get really into it when they were hyping it on the stream, the dev stream.
Mhm.
I tried to get really into it. I couldn't. I love those models. Like, all those models are just amazing.
See, I was
Like,
the
they're
exact
all silly
opposite.
and
I was the opposite. I saw the game being played. I'm like, it looks pretty cool. Like, there's all the smashing and the throwing through buildings and all that, but the models just never really called out to me at all until I saw this freaking beetle. And I was like, okay, I'll try one.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on! You don't like
And then that-
you don't like apes with guns?
Oh no, I don't like those. But like the Hercules beetle and then the new bee one, those all the swarm stuff is like super.
Yeah,
Like Savage
Uh,
Swarm's what they're called, right?
Yeah.
absolutely agree. So I know nothing about the game right now. I just wanted to paint up this stupid beetle.
Are you gonna use some color shift paints on his hide?
I'm not sure yet. I have not played around with color shift, but I've seen some people who have, and it's really cool looking.
Me either, but I keep edging myself closer to eventually finding some kind of project where I can use them.
Yeah.
And I think Beetle Shell is like the perfect excuse.
Well, one of the guys here, he plays the Martian faction in Monpok, and all of his flying saucers are done in color shift.
That would be cool.
That's cool.
It looks amazing. Yeah.
At least you have somebody that could kind of teach you how to do it. Because I know Sneaky had these big color shift plans for his ISA, and he ended up doing them in yellow after all.
my airbrush just hated the color shift. Like I don't know why. It was just
Weird.
it would gunk up so bad, and yeah, so I just couldn't do it.
It was sad. I shed a tear when he said I'm not using it.
Dang.
I shelved the whole airbrush, and I was like, I'm going to buy some contrast paints. That's what that's what I did.
Oh, contrast paints just make my life so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lean on those things way too much. Like, for somebody that's been painting as long as I have, to just be like, I'm gonna take this easy way out is feels a little shameful. But when I spend like half the time on models, like, you know what, this is worth the shame.
Yep.
Shame
nobody knows.
approved. Shame approved.
Mhm.
So anybody who's interested in maybe doing their own YouTube thing, what kind of equipment do you have for filming? And, you know, what kinds of things do people need to take into account if they want to try and emulate what you're doing?
Well, on the good news is I have a shockingly low budget operation because I'm cheap.
Yes.
But prior to talking about the cameras, I'll actually pass on a little bit of advice I got from a friend of mine when I was first getting into it. I talked to Uncle Adam over at Tabletop Minions, who's a really
you
cool
just
guy.
know, like, all the people.
They're cool people. They're honestly really fun.
Throwing out all the big names.
Yeah, but I talked to him about, like, hey, what kind of camera setup, what kind of lighting setup do I need and all that. And his advice was film it on your phone. Film your first battle report on your phone. Film it, edit it, cut it together, all that kind of stuff. And if that process was not absolutely agonizing, then go buy a camera. If you do it on your phone and it sucks, then this is probably not for you.
I tried to do one battle report, like, without editing or anything, and just uploading to YouTube was awful for me. I don't know. I am just like YouTube, like, illiterate. Like, I can't do it. So
Yeah.
my hat's off to you to, like, keep doing it. Be
It's
consistent and constant, and have something coming out all the time.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's spun off into its own hobby. But the big things, if someone does want to get into it, the things I can recommend. The camera I use is a Canon. Hang on, it's right over here. It's a Canon Vixia R800, which is like the $200, $250 camera. Nothing.
Not terrible, honestly.
No, it's nothing huge fancy, and it's a lapel mic because audio is really important.
Yes.
And
That audio is like the worst.
yes, and something I've struggled with early in the first couple of videos. If you really want to watch some terrible videos, go watch the very first YouTube or the very first War Buddies videos because I'm filming it on my tablet.
Oh, wow.
It's bad. I won't take them down because it's part of my history now, but it's bad.
Well, it's like that first miniature you ever paint, right? That thing is always just the ugliest miniature you've ever seen anybody have in their entire life. But most people hold on to it because it's a reminder.
Yeah. It's horrifying and I love it.
And then now these kids these days have the contrast paints, so their first miniature can look beautiful.
Contrast paints and ink washes.
I wish I'd have picked up on those a lot sooner.
But as far as the software goes, I will honestly wholeheartedly recommend Wondershare Filmora is a program I use. It's like $30 a year.
That's
It's
not bad if you're consistent at all.
No, it's not very powerful, but it's very user friendly, which is good because I am not that bright some days.
Oh, that sounds perfect for me. Like, I don't need all the special stuff. I don't need all that. I just need to, hey, I want to cut this video here, add this thing here, maybe continue it there, have an audio track that I can clip and put over it. Done. Yep,
and that's exactly what it does. Everything that I do in War Buddies, I run through Filmora. And they're not sponsoring me for this.
Awesome.
I'm just giving them a shout out because they're awesome.
That is awesome. If I ever try and get back into film stuff, I'm definitely using that, because trying to use like different programs, like even just for I've been getting the 3D printing.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to learn some of like the more advanced programs where you can do more than simple things. And I'm just like, I'm so lost whenever I get into one of those. And then I get into like Tinkercad, the website, and I'm like, yes, I can make just about anything. Like, and it is like the most like basic dumb interface ever, and you don't really get much freedom, but you get enough to where, you know, if you play with it enough, you can get most things pretty close to what you want. So
that's pretty good.
It's one of those things. So I completely this software sounds amazing to me already. Like, if I was into video, I'd be like, yes, buying it right now.
Yeah.
And $30 a year is like nothing. That's $3 a month. If you're using it, then it's worth it.
Yeah, it's more than paid for itself with just making my life easier.
As long as I don't treat it like a gym membership, then we're good. Throughout your time doing all these videos and everything, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've encountered?
Honestly, the biggest challenge has been time. The whole thing, since War Budgies is 100% just a side hobby project, it doesn't make any money or anything. Then obviously I'm still working full time, still in the military, so full time plus.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so just finding the time to sit down and actually write these things up, edit them, film them, do the whole creative process it's a big lift.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were, full employed and then military on top of it. It's like, oh.
I like to live life on hard mode sometimes.
Apparently, I even reserves was just like more of it wasn't bad, but it was an annoyance when I was in there. But hats off to you, man.
Well, thank you. Honestly, thank you. I appreciate that. But I just started doing regular episodes starting last year, because for a long time it was just like, hey, I'll post whenever I feel like it. And that's not a great way to build an audience or get to know the community, because they don't know when to expect stuff.
Right.
So I made the promise last year. I'm like, look, I'm going to start running this in seasons. And when I start a season, I'm going to put out as consistently as I can until I'm done with that season. And it's worked really well. I've been holding myself to the deadlines for the most part. I've missed a few days, missed a few weeks here and there. But the channel, as of this week, we're just over 1,200 subscribers, which is like 1,100 more than I ever thought I'd have.
Hey, I think it's impressive. I mean, when you look at it, like, the content that we're talking about here is honestly a niche within a niche, right? Like, wargaming is its own niche of people. And then people that specifically play Fallout or Warcaster are like subsections of that, right? So I personally think that 1,200 is a huge accomplishment. Personally,
I'm super excited. It is honestly tremendously fun, even after all the work you put into it. It's the 8 or 9 hours of work, and then you publish it, and all the comments start to flood in. And honestly, the Warcaster community has been super, super awesome about having me as the new guy doing this kind of content, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
I think, you're also doing a kind of content that this community isn't used to either, because I suspect that probably half or more of us are probably War Machine trans, and the other half are like people that the War Machine people are like, hey, you should check out this game this company is making. Most of the other people were War Machine adjacent anyway. They didn't play, but they knew somebody that played, and that person probably got them.
Yeah.
And like your whole narrative style, not necessarily doing the most go for the throat kind of move every turn, is very, very different for them. So like I'm really happy that they've embraced you. And I think everybody's really enjoying your content. Like I say, it's a bit away from what people are kind of used to, because people are used to like trying to watch a battle report and feeling like, oh, what unit should I get? Which one does the best here? Right. Like, how do I play this game? And yours will teach people how to play the game. They aren't going to be taught wrong in your videos, but you're not doing the most go for the throat things every turn.
Yeah.
right? Like you weren't chain activating Strike Raptor 3 turns out of a pulse round.
That's been your example every time. I'm very curious to try the
Listen,
Strike Raptor now.
Josh has gotten me. Like I can't. It's too hard. I can't talk about it.
I mean that most Marcher Worlds games come down to how often can they activate the Strike Raptor. Yeah.
And then me and Josh even tried to like switch sides one time, and I played Marcher Worlds versus him playing AC.
Mhm.
And then, because I always tell him, I'm like, you realize like you don't have to activate the Strike Raptor every turn. It's still producing value by just sitting there sometimes. And then I was playing them, and every turn I activated the Strike Raptor. And I was like, it just wasn't a better activation. Like I just removed all your things all the time. Like
Yeah. Pretty
it's a
much.
hard life. It's a hard life.
I do have to say that you mentioning like the comments and stuff that you got on your YouTube, like that's probably the thing that like I wish we had more of most in like the podcasting format, because there's not really anywhere for people to leave comments, and even if there are, it's not convenient. Like people aren't going to listen to it on Spotify and then come log on to our website and then leave some comments. Well, YouTube, like you're there, you're like, oh, I watched this video, it was awesome, cool, thumbs up, thanks guy. Like it's like the one thing I wish we got more of, like from the podcasting format.
Absolutely. I think it's really cool that Warcaster is still, at least in my opinion, still a very young game.
Oh, it is.
And I think it's awesome that you guys have your podcast and we have all these people out here making the 3D models and the YouTube videos and all that. It's really cropped up in a hurry, and I think that's awesome.
Well, I mean, it also cropped up in a time where everything was against it, right? Like, the first Kickstarter got announced, and before it was over, all the lockdowns started happening. and nothing's like, in some places it's been okay. Like I guess Australia, you can pretty much go out and do whatever you want most of the time, anyways. From what I understand, because they have like 2 cases. That's not a jab at Australia. It's just an observation from what I've heard from different sources. And so you really haven't had the stores open up where you can see people playing Warcaster and come over and be like, what is this game? And oh, hey, where do I get a starter box for that? That looks really cool. Or, like I know when the store that's like 15 minutes away from me has their gaming areas opened up, I'd like to set up demo days, just have a Saturday and be like, hey, do you mind if I have space for 1 30 by 30 table and maybe some tokens and stuff? And I set up a board and anybody that wants to play can play.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I purposely got 2 factions just so I could do something like that. I'm really hyped to do it. I want people to see the game, because I think it's so weird. Warcaster is one of those games, once you give people just that small taste of it, sometimes it's just enough.
Yeah.
And it's, you've ruined their marriage, and they bought $300 worth of miniatures, and
that escalated quickly.
At least, and you know what? As far as like money in games, Warcaster's not necessarily good unless you're wanting to stay on the skirmish level, but it's also not bad either. It's not like buying a 40k army, because
no, it's really not bad, and this from a guy who's collecting all 3 armies right now.
Right, like skirmish. I mean, you could make a full skirmish. Probably not the best skirmish list, but you could probably make enough to play a full filled out skirmish minus the heroes, maybe for $360 for each of the 3 starter factions.
Oh, way cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying,
Way
like
cheaper.
2 starter boxes DGI.
Yeah, I mean that's what, $100?
Yeah, but I mean, like, are you going to play Marcher Worlds without at least 1 engineer?
No. I mean, we've done our like calculations before. Like DGI, I mean, you're looking at like for a full-fledged skirmish force, depending on like which faction you are and how many 40s you have and stuff like that. Somewhere between 180 and 220 is a skirmish force.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, you can get it a lot better than that. I mean, I'm just the sick person that wants to run 3 firebrands, so that's where I got caught up. But anyways, John, did you have any closing thoughts you wanted to close us out with?
No, I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. And if anybody's listening and you're already a viewer of War Budgies, thank you very much for being so welcoming to this community, because it's really my first step into Privateer Press's brand of games, but I'm really having a good time.
Well, thanks for coming on. And hey, the community really welcomes you. We really like what you're doing. We look forward to more. I'll speak for them. I mean, that's one thing I have noticed with Privateer Press games is like the community. I have not really had a bad interaction in the community. I've liked I've liked all the players I've played against the different things. I've gone to different events and had a great time. I've never really had like these contentious moments with anybody. So I hope that's just the culture of Privateer Press game, and I'm hoping you get to experience more of that. And I'm hoping I get to experience it in person more, because I'm hoping things open up and I can start showing people Warcaster and get more people hyped.
Absolutely.
Hashtag broker brawl.
Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, I know that me and Sneak plan on going too, right?
I will try.
I
Depends
know
on
if
what
if
October
it is
looks
all
like.
It is all possible. I know I'm planning on going to Boca Brawl this year. It's in New Jersey in October. Guy named Seth Conrad runs it. He's a really nice guy, really good dude. They usually have great, just tons of little things you can get for prizing. I know they do the big base brawl for War Machine, where like half the people there get a big base miniature, like a colossal size miniature.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, they handed out like 15 and it's like a 32 slots or something. So like half the people will get a colossal miniature. And then on top of that, he has like a bounty system to where, hey, if you do these different things in games, you can come up to the prize table, and depending on what tier they are, you get different things. He runs a really awesome event. It's just in a little VFW hall. This year, he's adding a Warcaster skirmish tournament every day of the event. To my knowledge, it's every day.
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm super hyped. I will go to anything that Seth is running because he's a good dude. So
I'll check it out.
yeah, and he usually keeps things fairly cheap. Like I think the big base brawl, I think it was like $30 to enter. But when you realize you've got roughly a 50% chance of getting a huge base, I mean that pays for it anyways. So
Right.
I can't say enough good things about that event. That was the last event I went to before all the lockdowns and everything. I had a great time. It's a wonderfully run event. Everything went smooth. Lunch was provided. What more can you ask for?
Hey, if they're providing lunch, I'm there.
Yeah. But anyways, anybody that's wanting to see more from John, they can go to his YouTube channel at War Budgies.
Yep.
And
we are also on
luckily,
Facebook
nobody
and
else is
Instagram.
named War Budgies, so it's pretty easy to find.
That is true.
And yeah, I hope more people that haven't seen his content yet go back, watch the prologue, watch the rest of it. There's a lot of interesting ideas, and it really shows where Warcaster can grow, especially in the narrative side.
Yeah.
So thank you again, and thank you everybody for listening. If you want to, you can go visit our throughthevoidgate.com. That has some blogs that me and Sneaky write, has all of our episodes, has a lot of stuff for you guys if you're looking for additional content. We're hopefully going to start streaming on Twitch again soon. That's under SX War Games right now. So look forward to that. I would like to start streaming some games and, just get more stuff out there for people to watch and listen to and see. So thanks from all of us, and you guys have a good one.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by SX War Games. Now, if y'all enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, for more content, you can check out the Through the Void Gate blog, or join us on the SX War Games Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Stay safe and roll super strikes.